You know that feeling at the end of a Sunday when you look back at the week and realize you were busy every single day, but your bank account looks exactly the same as it did 7 days ago? Not because you were lazy, not because you didn't try. You went to work, you ran errands, you showed up for people, you said yes to things. You were exhausted by Friday. And yet, nothing moved. I spent years in that loop before I figured out what was actually happening. It wasn't about doing more. It was about the specific things I kept doing that were quietly costing me every single week without me noticing. So today, 7 things I quit. None of them are coffee. What I'm about to share isn't a magic formula. It's a list of habits I personally dropped one at a time over a few years. Some of them took me embarrassingly long to recognize. A couple of them I'm still working on, honestly. I'm not going to pretend I figured all this out at once. I didn't. But looking back, these 7 things were quietly draining my time, my energy, and in most cases my actual money in ways I didn't see until I was already in the hole. Let's start with the one that cost me the most cash before I noticed it. The first thing I quit was reading, to feel productive instead of learning to solve a specific problem. Here's something nobody talks about because it feels too embarrassing to admit. I own somewhere around 42 books on personal finance, productivity, and investing. I have taken, at last count, 11 online courses on topics ranging from budgeting to real estate to, I kid you not, a course on how to finish courses. How many of those have I actually applied? Maybe 4. The rest are what I call shelf trophies. You buy them, you feel the little dopamine hit of having made a responsible adult decision, and then they sit there. On your nightstand, on your Kindle app, in your Udemy dashboard with that little green progress bar stuck at 3% for 14 months. I wasn't building wealth. I was building a library I could brag about. And here's the part that actually hurts when you do the math. The average American spends somewhere between $400 and $600 a year on books, courses, and self-improvement subscriptions. If you are in your late 20s or 30s, and you have been doing this for, say, 5 years, that is potentially $2,000 to $3,000 sitting on a metaphorical shelf. Not invested, not used, just purchased. I used to tell myself the reasons were very logical. I haven't finished chapter 4 yet. I need to read one more book to get the full picture first. I'll start applying this in January. That was the January of 3 years ago. January of 3 years ago. I used to think finishing the book was the point. I was wrong. The book was just the cover charge. The shift that actually worked for me was what I now call just-in-time learning. Instead of buying something because it seemed interesting or because it was on sale for 90% off, I only pick up a resource when I have a specific problem I am actively trying to solve right now. Credit card debt bothering you today? Find one book, one course, one podcast series specifically about debt payoff. Read it, apply it, then stop. You don't need the full library first. The information you need to move forward on most financial goals already exists, and most of it is free or cheap. The bottleneck is almost never more information. It's the gap between knowing and doing. That's the whole thing. So before you add anything else to your reading list, ask yourself, what problem am I trying to solve this week? Start there. The second thing I quit was taking advice from people who haven't actually done the thing. After you fix how you learn, the next question is who you're learning from. And this one is uncomfortable because the people giving you the most advice about money are usually the people who love you the most. Your parents, your coworkers, your uncle who has very strong opinions about real estate. I want to be careful here because I'm not saying these people don't mean well. They absolutely do. But there is a specific problem with taking financial advice from someone whose financial situation is not where you want to end up. The advice that got them to where they are is optimized for getting you to exactly where they are, which might not be where you want to go. The people in my life who pushed hardest for me to play it safe with money, keep a stable job, don't do anything risky, those same people were the ones living paycheck to paycheck at 55 and calling it responsible. I'm not judging them. I'm just saying their advice was calibrated for their fear level, not my goals. Financial advisors with no investments of their own, finance influencers whose main income is selling courses about income, co-workers who are technically getting by and therefore consider themselves qualified to tell you not to rock the boat. Their intentions are good. Their track record is the part worth questioning. You don't need to know a millionaire personally, but you do need to identify at least one voice in your life, even if it's just someone online who has actually done the specific thing you're trying to do. Not just talked about it, done it. And study how they think about problems, not just what they did. The strategy matters less than where the strategy came from. That's the trade. The third thing I quit was blaming everything without following it with a plan. This one needs a disclaimer right up front. The financial system in this country has some genuinely unfair mechanics built into it. Housing costs have roughly doubled relative to income over the past 2 decades. Student loan debt is eating a significant portion of a whole generation's paycheck before they even get started. Those are real structural issues, not just excuses. So I'm not going to stand here and tell you that everything is your fault and you just need to work harder. That's not honest, and frankly, it's not helpful. What I will say is this. There is a difference between this system is hard and therefore there is nothing I can do. The first one is just accurate. The second one is where you give away all your power. I spent a long time in the second camp without realizing it. I blamed my income for my debt. I blamed my rent for my inability to save. I blamed inflation for purchases that, upon reflection, had nothing to do with inflation. I once genuinely blamed rising grocery prices for a pair of sneakers I added to an Amazon cart at 1 a.m. and checked out without thinking. The system didn't do that. That was just me half asleep clicking buy. Here's the reframe that actually helped me. Blame is fine as a diagnosis. It becomes a problem when it replaces a plan. If you can look at something that's not working in your finances and say, yes, this factor is making it harder, and then immediately follow that with, so here's what I'm going to do anyway, you're using it correctly. Blame with no next step is just expensive venting. That's the trap. The fourth thing I quit was saying yes to everything, because I was afraid to miss out. Here is a math problem nobody puts in personal finance books. If you say yes to every opportunity, every social obligation, every work request, every side project, every favor, what percentage of those things actually get done well? Not just done well. In my experience, the answer is somewhere between not many, and I have let a lot of people down quietly. A person who can never say no is not a reliable person. They're just a person who hasn't disappointed you yet. I used to say yes to freelance work I didn't have bandwidth for because I was scared that saying no meant closing a door permanently. So I'd take the project, stay up, responding to Slack pings at 11 at night, do a mediocre job under time pressure, and end up with a client who wouldn't hire me again anyway. I said no with my quality instead of my words, and that's the most expensive version of no there is. If that's you right now, yeah, I get it. The fear that saying no means you'll stop getting asked is real. It's also usually wrong. The filter question I now use before committing to anything, and this works for money too, not just time, is, does this move me toward a specific goal I have right now? Not a vague someday goal, a right now goal. If the answer isn't clear in about 10 seconds, that's a no. The right opportunities are usually obvious. The mediocre ones are the ones that require convincing yourself they're worth it. Protecting your yes means having something real to give when the thing that actually matters shows up. That's it. The fifth thing I quit was letting my phone quietly drain the time I should have been spending on my finances. Let me be very clear about something. The phone is not the problem. The phone is just a symptom of not having a plan clear enough to compete with a notification. That said, the symptom is costing you real money. Here is a number worth sitting with. The average person in the US spends somewhere around 3 to 4 hours a day on their phone outside of work. If your time is worth $20 an hour, based on a rough calculation of your salary, that is $60 to $80 a day in opportunity cost. Not money spent. Just time that could have gone toward a skill, a side income, a financial decision that actually needed your attention. I have at various points had an app for budgeting, an app for meditation, an app for tracking habits, and an app specifically designed to show me how much time I was wasting on my phone. I used all 4 of them to procrastinate. To be fair, the budgeting app did help. Once. I opened it 3 times total. One change that actually moved the needle for me: move every social media app off your home screen. Not delete, just move. The extra 2 taps creates just enough friction to interrupt the autopilot. It sounds too small to matter. It isn't. The 6th thing I quit was maintaining relationships that were quietly resetting my financial baseline. This is the one that feels mean to talk about, so I want to frame it carefully. I'm not saying cut off your friends. I'm saying pay attention to what normal looks like in the groups you spend the most time in. There is solid research on this. People consistently spend more money when they are around others with higher spending habits, not because anyone is pressuring them, but because the definition of normal gets recalibrated over time. A dinner that would have felt expensive becomes just what you do on Fridays. A weekend trip becomes just the usual thing. Nobody made you spend that money. The social context just made it feel expected. I had a group like this for a few years. Great people, genuinely liked all of them, but the baseline spending level of that group was about $300 a month more than I could actually afford while also saving anything. I didn't cut anyone off. I just started being more intentional about which hangouts I showed up for. and which ones I declined. Your environment sets your financial thermostat whether you notice it or not. Most people don't notice it. That's kind of the whole problem. The seventh thing I quit was comparing my financial situation to someone else's highlight reel. This one has a financial consequence that doesn't get talked about enough. Comparison doesn't just make you feel bad, it makes you make bad money decisions. Buying a house because your friend just bought one and you feel behind. Upgrading your car because your coworker showed up in something new. Taking a vacation you can't afford because Instagram made it look like everyone else was living a life you weren't. Lifestyle inflation driven by comparison is one of the most common reasons people with genuinely decent incomes still can't build any real savings. Here is the part worth remembering. The person posting the Maldives vacation photo might be paying that trip off on a credit card for the next 18 months. You are comparing your actual bank account to someone else's debt. That is not a fair comparison, and it is not a useful one. The only financial comparison that is actually worth making is you versus yourself 6 months ago. Is your net worth higher? Is your savings rate better? Have you paid down any debt? Those are the numbers that matter for your specific life in your specific city with your specific income. Someone else's chapter 27 is not your benchmark. You're in chapter 3, or chapter 8, or wherever you actually are. And that's fine. That's where you start from. The only scorecard worth keeping is the one with your name on it. Everything else is just noise you're paying for. 7 things. None of them were easy. Most of them took longer than I'd like to admit. The shelf full of unread books is still partially there, I'll be honest. I bought one last month that I haven't opened yet. The comparison trap still gets me sometimes when I'm having a particularly bad week and someone posts something shiny on social media. I'm not standing here as someone who has perfectly executed all 7 of these. I'm standing here as someone who has made enough progress on each of them to tell you that the friction is worth it. What I'd suggest is this. Don't try to tackle all 7 at once. Pick the one that made you most uncomfortable when I described it. That's probably the one that's costing you the most right now. For most people I talk to, it's either the shelf trophy problem or the comparison problem. One is costing them money directly. The other is driving them towards spending they wouldn't otherwise make. Both are fixable. You don't need a perfect system. You don't need to have it all figured out by next week. You just need to start pulling out the things that are quietly working against you one at a time and replacing them with something that actually moves you forward. The math on your financial life doesn't care about your intentions. It only reflects your actual decisions made over actual time. Start with one thing. This week, not next month. Your future bank balance is built out of small decisions. Today's ones, tomorrow's ones. The ones you make when you're tired and nobody's watching, and it would be easier not to bother. That's really all it is.